Welcome to Occult Mysticism, your gateway to the unknown. Today we unravel Isis Unveiled, a master key to the mysteries of ancient and modern science and theology by H.P. Blavatsky, a profound exploration of hidden truths bridging ancient wisdom and modern thought. Join us on this mystical journey. Subscribe for more esoteric insights. In the vast panorama of human intellectual endeavor, where threads of wisdom and folly intertwine through the ages, there occasionally emerges a work of such monumental scope and audacious spirit that it compels a re-evaluation of all that has come before. Such a work, a veritable intellectual and spiritual earthquake, is H.P. Blavatsky's Isis Unveiled, a master key to the mysteries of ancient and modern science and theology. It is not merely a book. It is a philosophical assault upon the citadels of materialistic science and dogmatic theology, a passionate plea for the restoration of a forgotten wisdom, and a profound exposition of the perennial truths that lie veiled beneath the surface of phenomenal existence. To truly apprehend its magnitude, one must approach it not as a casual reader but as a seeker, prepared to embark upon a journey through the labyrinthine corridors of ancient lore and modern misconception, guided by the fiery intellect and boundless erudition of its author. The prologue, A Call to the Unveiled Truth, the very title, Isis Unveiled, serves as a potent and evocative invocation. Isis, the Egyptian goddess, embodies the universal mother, nature in her entirety. Not merely the visible, tangible, and measurable aspects, but the hidden, noumenal, and intelligent forces that constitute her true essence. This divine Sophia, this boundless wisdom, remains perpetually veiled from the profane gaze, concealed by the thick obfuscations of human ignorance, intellectual arrogance, and the self-imposed limitations of conventional thought. This veil, woven from the fabric of materialism and sectarian dogma, prevents humanity from perceiving the profound unity that underlies all manifested forms. Blavatsky, with the unwavering conviction of an initiate, undertakes the Herculean task of lifting a corner of this sacred veil, offering to the earnest seeker glimpses of the primordial wisdom that has sustained the spiritual aspirations of humanity since the dawn of consciousness. We, the inheritors of a civilization steeped in the triumphs and tragedies of the modern era, find ourselves, as Blavatsky so incisively diagnoses, in an age of profound doubt and pervasive materialism. The relentless march of empirical science, while undeniably shedding light upon certain facets of the physical world, has simultaneously cast a long, chilling shadow of skepticism over all that transcends the measurable, the quantifiable, and the tangible. Its instruments, though marvels of human ingenuity, are inherently limited to the grossest manifestations of reality, rendering it blind to the subtle energies and intelligent forces that constitute the true life of the cosmos. Meanwhile, dogmatic theology, clinging desperately to literal interpretations of ancient allegories and sectarian exclusivity, has too often stifled genuine spiritual inquiry, replacing profound mystical experience with rigid creeds, fear-mongering pronouncements, and an unyielding insistence upon its own infallibility. Between these two warring factions, the atheistic scientist who denies the soul and the dogmatic theologian who imprisons it, humanity finds itself adrift, spiritually famished and intellectually disoriented, yearning for a coherent philosophy that can reconcile the visible with the invisible, the material with the spiritual. Yet, amidst this intellectual wasteland, there echoes a resonant whisper, a persistent call from the hallowed halls of forgotten civilizations. From the monumental pyramids of ancient Egypt, whose very stones seem to hum with forgotten knowledge, to the mystical temples of India, where the profoundest truths of cosmic cycles were first enunciated, from the oracular sanctuaries of Greece, where the wisdom of the gods was channeled, to the hidden communities of the Essenes, who preserved the gnosis of their ancestors, there existed a universal philosophy. This secret doctrine, as Blavatsky terms it, was not a mere collection of superstitions or primitive beliefs, but a sophisticated system of knowledge that recognized the unity of all life, the spiritual nature of man as a microcosm of the macrocosm, and the intelligent, conscious forces operating behind the phenomena of the physical world. It was a philosophy that embraced the cyclical nature of time, the septenary constitution of man and cosmos, and the immutable laws of cause and effect that govern all existence. It is this philosophia perennis, this eternal wisdom, that Blavatsky endeavors to resurrect, demonstrating its consistent presence throughout history, lying dormant beneath the varied vestments of myth, symbol, and ritual, awaiting the discerning eye to perceive its underlying harmony. Her intent in Isis Unveiled is nothing short of audacious: to expose the inherent fallacies and self-imposed limitations of both modern science and dogmatic theology, not out of malice or a destructive impulse, but out of a fervent desire to reveal the enduring reality of spiritual phenomena and the underlying harmony of the cosmos. She aims to demonstrate that what is often dismissed by the skeptical as mere superstition, or by the credulous as a supernatural miracle, is in fact the consistent operation of natural laws, albeit laws belonging to a higher, more subtle order of existence, intimately understood and consciously wielded by the ancient adepts and initiates. It is a work designed to shatter preconceived notions, to expand the horizons of human understanding, and to re-establish the rightful supremacy of spiritual truth in an age that has largely forgotten its divine heritage. Part 1. Science. The shifting sands of modern dogma versus the immutable rock of ancient lore. The first volume of Isis Unveiled embarks upon a meticulous, often scathing, and always intellectually rigorous critique of the scientific orthodoxy prevalent in Blavatsky's era. She systematically juxtaposes the narrow, mechanistic materialism of contemporary science with the expansive, holistic, and deeply spiritual understanding of the universe held by ancient civilizations. Her central assertion is that the ancients possessed a science far more profound and comprehensive than our own, one that embraced the spiritual and energetic dimensions of reality as integral to the physical, rather than relegating them to the realm of mere belief or fantasy. The grand cycles of existence, cosmic rhythms, and human destiny. One of the most fundamental and striking divergences between ancient wisdom and modern thought lies in their respective conceptions of time, evolution, and the very fabric of existence. 19th century science, still largely constrained by a linear view of history and a relatively recent origin for humanity, often influenced by biblical chronology, struggled to reconcile its findings with the vastness of geological time or the profound antiquity of certain human artifacts. Blavatsky, drawing upon the immense reservoirs of Oriental philosophy, particularly the Hindu Puranas and the esoteric traditions of Egypt and Chaldea, introduces the reader to the majestic sweep of cosmic and human evolution as understood by the ancients. She speaks of immense cycles, the yugas of India, Satya, Treta, Dvapara, Kali, the Kalpas, the Manvantaras, and the great years periods of time so vast as to dwarf the entirety of recorded human history into a mere fleeting moment. These cycles, she explains, are not arbitrary divisions but represent the rhythmic pulsation of the universe, governing not only the unfolding of planetary systems and solar systems, but also the gradual development and densification of human consciousness and form. Humanity, in this ancient view, did not spring forth suddenly in its present physical state, but evolved through ethereal, semi-physical, and then increasingly material forms, a process of involution into matter that precedes the grand arc of evolution back toward spirit. The coats of skin mentioned in Genesis, she suggests, are not literal garments, but symbolic representations of the densification of the human form from its earlier, more ethereal states. This cyclical progression implies a continuous, unfolding drama of spirit descending into matter and then reascending, enriched by experience. Furthermore, this cyclical understanding extends to the recurrent civilizations that have graced our planet. The prevailing modern notion of linear progress, from a primitive, savage past to an ever-advancing, enlightened present, is challenged by Blavatsky's presentation of ancient records. She posits that humanity has experienced multiple golden ages, periods of profound knowledge, spiritual attainment, and technological prowess, before succumbing to successive declines, followed by new ascents. The very existence of architectural marvels whose construction defies modern explanation, such as the pyramids, megalithic structures, or the precision of ancient astronomical observatories, or the documented lost arts of antiquity, like the rumored malleable glass or the perpetual lamps that burned in ancient tombs, serves as silent yet eloquent testimony to this forgotten heritage. These were not the products of primitive minds, but the fruits of civilizations that understood and applied natural laws that modern science has yet to rediscover. The cyclical theory implies that knowledge, like all things, ebbs and flows, and that our current era, despite its technological advancements, may be but a segment of a larger, more complex pattern of cosmic unfolding. The myopia of modern science, a self-imposed prison. Blavatsky's critique of modern science is not born of a Luddite rejection of knowledge, but rather from a profound understanding of its inherent limitations and self-imposed constraints. She argues that the prevailing materialism's blindness prevents science from apprehending the totality of existence. By confining its inquiry solely to the physical realm, by refusing to acknowledge anything beyond the reach of its instruments and the five senses, science has deliberately amputated itself from the greater reality. It seeks to explain the universe solely through matter and motion, dismissing the very concept of spirit, consciousness, or a first intelligent cause as unscientific, superstitious, or beyond its purview. This reductionist approach, she contends, is fundamentally flawed, akin to studying the shadow cast by a tree and believing one has fully comprehended the living, breathing organism that casts it. The scientific method, while invaluable for empirical observation, becomes a straitjacket when applied exclusively to phenomena that transcend the physical. This self-imposed limitation leads directly to science's profound inability to comprehend, let alone explain, the myriad unseen forces that permeate existence. Phenomena such as mesmerism, animal magnetism, a popular yet highly controversial topic in her time, and the burgeoning spiritualism movement, were often dismissed by the scientific establishment as mere charlatanry, delusion, or trickery. Blavatsky, however, insists that these phenomena, when genuine and not the product of fraud, are indeed manifestations of natural laws operating on a plane beyond ordinary perception. She introduces the concept of a universal, all-pervading fluid, often referred to as the astral light or the ether, a living, intelligent medium that is the repository of all forms, forces, and memories. This subtle substance, known to ancient philosophers by various names, e.g., Akasha in India, the anima mundi of the Neoplatonists, the vril of Bulwer-Lytton's fiction, which Blavatsky suggests has a basis in reality, is the underlying medium for all phenomena, whether physical or psychic. It is the universal solvent, the cosmic mirror, the record of all events. Modern scientists, she suggests, stumble upon glimpses of this force, misnaming it psychic force, animal magnetism, or odic force, without fully comprehending its true nature, its vast potential, or its profound implications for understanding consciousness and life itself. She critiques contemporary physicists and chemists for their inability to account for vital phenomena, arguing that their models are incomplete because they ignore the non-physical dimensions. For example, she challenges the prevailing theories of heat, light, and electricity, suggesting they are not merely physical forces but manifestations of a more fundamental, intelligent energy. The consequence of this scientific hubris and myopic vision is a profound ignorance of ancient achievements. Blavatsky meticulously details historical accounts, often dismissed as myth or legend, of lost arts and sciences that defy modern capabilities. She speaks of malleable glass, a substance known to the Romans that could be bent without breaking, of perpetual lamps said to burn in ancient tombs for centuries without fuel, of ancient chemistry that could seemingly transmute elements, hinting at a deeper understanding of matter than our own, of advanced astronomical knowledge possessed by cultures without sophisticated telescopes, and of engineering feats like the precise cutting and moving of colossal stones that remain inexplicable even with modern technology. These examples are not presented as mere curiosities, but as irrefutable evidence that humanity, in its earlier cycles, possessed a profound understanding of nature's hidden laws, a knowledge that has since been forgotten, deliberately suppressed, or simply lost due to the cyclical decline of civilizations. The very existence of such marvels, she argues, should compel modern science to humble itself and look to the past for keys to unlock the universe's deeper secrets. The profound science of antiquity, unlocking nature's secrets. In stark contrast to modern science's limitations and its self-imposed blindness, Blavatsky presents the wisdom of the ancients not as mere superstition or philosophical speculation, but as a true scientific revelation, a system of knowledge that was holistic, profound, and deeply spiritual. The ancients, she asserts, understood that the universe was a living, intelligent organism and that true science involved understanding the laws governing both its visible and invisible aspects. The profound understanding of geometry as a master key to the universe is a recurring theme. The ancient Egyptians, Chaldeans, and Greeks did not view mathematics and geometry as merely abstract intellectual exercises or tools for practical construction. For them, these were sacred sciences, revealing the archetypal patterns and divine proportions that underlie all creation. The precise alignments of their temples, the symbolic forms of their sacred architecture, and the numerical relationships embedded in their myths were not accidental but deliberate expressions of cosmic principles. They saw in geometric forms the very blueprint of the cosmos, the manifestation of divine thought, a knowledge far removed from the purely utilitarian application of mathematics in the modern era. The Pythagorean school, for instance, understood numbers as living entities embodying universal laws rather than mere quantities. The ego sum, qui sum, I am that I am axiom of Hermetic philosophy, cited in the text, hints at this profound, self-referential and foundational nature of existence, a concept deeply intertwined with geometric and numerical principles. At the heart of ancient science was the recognition of the unity of nature. Through their understanding of magnetic sympathy and universal laws, they perceived the interconnectedness of all things, from the smallest atom to the grandest galaxy, from the human being to the farthest star. This unity was often expressed allegorically, as seen in the works of Hermetic philosophers like Athanasius Kircher on magnetism, or Paracelsus's profound concept of man as a microcosm, a miniature universe mirroring the macrocosm. Every part reflected the whole, and the same laws governed the visible and invisible realms. Disease, for instance, was seen not merely as a physical ailment, but as a disharmony in the subtle energetic balance of the individual, reflecting a larger cosmic imbalance. This holistic view stands in stark contrast to the fragmented, specialized approach of modern science. Crucially, the ancients also understood the power of will and imagination. They recognized the human will not as a mere psychological function or a product of brain chemistry, but as a potent creative force, a spiritual energy capable of influencing matter and producing phenomena. This was the true magic, the conscious application of will, guided by profound knowledge and ethical purity, to manipulate the subtle energies of the astral light. The Egyptian priests, the Indian yogis, the Chaldean magi, and the Greek hierophants were not charlatans but adepts who had mastered these inner sciences. This stands in stark contrast to modern science's timid and often dismissive attitude towards the subjective powers of the human mind, reducing thought to mere electrochemical impulses. Blavatsky argues that the power of imagination, when consciously directed, can shape reality, a concept that echoes the Hermetic principle of as above, so below. Furthermore, the phenomenon of psychometry, the ability to perceive the history of an object or place by touch or proximity, is presented as a modern corroboration of an ancient doctrine that all events, thoughts, and emotions are indelibly recorded in the universal ether, the astral light, which acts as the memory of God or the Akashic records. This concept underscores the idea that the universe is a living, conscious entity, perpetually recording its own unfoldment, and that certain individuals, through developed faculties, can access this universal archive. It challenges the notion that past events are simply gone, asserting their eternal imprint on the cosmic fabric, the invisible realms and their inhabitants, navigating the invisible realms. Blavatsky dedicates a significant portion of Isis Unveiled to elucidating the true nature of spirits and the phenomena associated with them, particularly in the context of the then-flourishing spiritualism movement. Her aim is to bring order and philosophical rigor to a field often characterized by confusion, credulity, and fraud. She emphasizes the critical need for distinguishing intelligences in the invisible realms, asserting that not all spirits manifesting through mediums are the disembodied souls of the deceased. She meticulously classifies these entities into various categories: human disembodied spirits or spirits proper. These are the astral shells or lower principles of deceased individuals, often confused, earthbound, or drawn to the physical plane by strong attachments. They may retain some semblance of their former personality but lack the higher spiritual principles that have ascended. Communication with these can be misleading and even dangerous. Elementals. These are nature spirits, non-human intelligences that inhabit the elements: earth, water, air, fire, ether. They are often unintelligent, mischievous, or simply automatons of nature, devoid of moral sense. They can be attracted and manipulated by human thought and emotion, and often play a role in physical phenomena attributed to spirits. Elementaries. These are the astral shells of deceased individuals who lived lives dominated by their lower desires and passions. Having lost their higher spiritual principles, they are devoid of true consciousness and are essentially vampiric entities seeking to feed on the vital energy of the living. They are often the true culprits behind malevolent or deceptive spiritualistic manifestations. Higher intelligences. Planetary spirits, while less discussed in the context of mediumistic phenomena, Blavatsky alludes to the existence of truly evolved, non-human intelligences or planetary spirits, who rarely, if ever, interact with the physical plane through conventional mediumship. This distinction is vital, as indiscriminate communication with these entities, particularly the lower ones, can be fraught with peril. She explains materialization and its mechanism not as the direct appearance of a fully embodied spirit, but as a temporary condensation of the astral light, often animated by elemental beings, by the astral double of the medium itself, or by the collective thought forms of the sitters. These forms are ephemeral, lacking true independent consciousness, and are sustained by the vital energy of the medium and the sitters. They are often automatic, reflecting the expectations and beliefs of those present, rather than being genuine manifestations of the deceased. This leads to a stern and repeated warning regarding the perils of uncontrolled mediumship. Passive mediumship, where an individual surrenders their will and faculties to unknown forces, is depicted as highly dangerous. Without philosophical understanding, ethical purity, and conscious control, a medium can become a mere instrument for lower, often deceptive, and even vampiric entities, leading to physical exhaustion, mental derangement, and moral degradation. The medium's own vital essence is drained, and their personality can be overshadowed or even taken over by the entities they attract. True spiritual development, she argues, involves active self-mastery, the conscious unfolding of inner faculties such as clairvoyance and clairaudience through discipline and ethical living, not passive surrender. Part 2. Theology. The shackles of dogma versus the liberty of esoteric truth. Having systematically dismantled the materialistic edifice of modern science and exposed its inherent limitations, Blavatsky turns her formidable intellect and vast erudition to the equally entrenched dogmatism of theology, particularly focusing on the historical and philosophical foundations of Christianity. Her aim is not to destroy genuine faith or spiritual aspiration, but to reveal the profound universal truths that have been obscured, distorted, and often deliberately suppressed by centuries of literal interpretation, sectarian strife, and the relentless pursuit of ecclesiastical power. She argues that the sacred texts of all religions, including the Bible, are replete with allegories and symbols whose deeper meanings have been lost or intentionally concealed. The corruption of primitive revelation, a history of distortion. At the core of Blavatsky's theological critique is the assertion that all ancient religions, in their pristine forms, possessed an exoteric versus esoteric religion. The exoteric was the outer, public, literal form. The myths, rituals, parables, and moral codes accessible to the masses, often designed to convey profound truths in a simplified, allegorical, or veiled manner suitable for the general populace. The esoteric, however, was the inner, secret philosophical core, the true, unadulterated meaning understood only by initiates and adepts, preserved in mystery schools, secret brotherhoods, and oral traditions. This dual nature was essential to protect profound spiritual knowledge from profanation, misunderstanding, and misuse by the unready, who might distort or abuse its power. Her most controversial, yet meticulously argued, point is that Christianity's borrowed robes are evident throughout its doctrines, rites, and symbols. She demonstrates, with extensive historical and comparative analysis, that many core Christian tenets, the virgin birth, the resurrection, the Trinity, the sacraments, baptism, communion, the symbolism of the cross, the concept of a divine Savior, the narratives of miracles, are not unique revelations but are found, often in more ancient and profound forms, in older pagan, Jewish, and Oriental traditions. She draws parallels to Egyptian mythology, Osiris, Isis, Horus, Greek mystery religions, Eleusinian, Orphic, Mithraism, a savior born of a virgin, resurrection, communion, and the philosophical systems of India and Persia. These concepts, she argues, were adopted, adapted, and often distorted from their original esoteric meanings to serve the emerging ecclesiastical power structure of the early Christian Church. For instance, the sun god myths of various pagan cultures, with their narratives of birth at the winter solstice and resurrection in spring, are seen as the archetypal source for the Christ story, which was then literalized. The fabrication of dogmas is exposed through historical interpolations and alleged falsifications in biblical texts and early church history, designed to support new theological constructs and consolidate power. Blavatsky points to the Council of Nicaea, 325 C, as a pivotal moment where political expediency and imperial decree played a greater role than spiritual revelation in defining Christian orthodoxy, particularly regarding the nature of Christ and the Trinity. She argues that numerous texts, deemed heretical because they contradicted the evolving narrative, were destroyed or suppressed, and existing texts were altered to fit the desired theological framework. The concept of a literal hell, the exclusive path to salvation through a specific creed, and the absolute authority of the priesthood are presented as inventions designed to control the masses through fear and dependency. The very notion of Peter's martyrdom in Rome, she suggests, lacks solid historical evidence and was propagated to establish the supremacy of the Roman See, the true nature of God and immortality, the divine within and without. Blavatsky challenges the prevailing anthropomorphic conception of God, which she views as a limiting and often contradictory construct. She advocates instead for the unknown God versus anthropomorphic deities. The true esoteric understanding, she explains, points to a supreme, unknowable, infinite principle, the Ein Sof of the Kabbalists, the Ein Sof of the Hermeticists, the Parabrahma of the Hindus, an absolute, impersonal, boundless reality that transcends all human conception, definition, and attributes. This ultimate reality is beyond form, name, or qualification. This stands in stark contrast to the limited, human-like Lord God of exoteric religions, often depicted with human emotions, anger, jealousy, vengeance, and frailties, a concept that inevitably leads to theological contradictions, moral dilemmas, and the projection of human imperfections onto the divine. The true God is the all, the boundless source from which all manifestation springs, not a personal deity sitting on a throne. The concept of the Trinity as universal archetype is a significant theme. Blavatsky demonstrates that the triune nature of divinity is not a unique Christian revelation, but a fundamental cosmic principle found in countless ancient cosmogonies and philosophical systems. Whether expressed as spirit, force, matter, Father, Mother, Son, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, the Hindu Trimurti of creation, preservation, and dissolution, Osiris, Isis, Horus in Egypt, or the triadic emanations of the Gnostics and Neoplatonists, the idea of a triune manifestation of divinity is a universal archetype. It represents the three fundamental aspects of manifestation from the absolute unity. Christianity, she argues, merely adopted and reinterpreted this ancient concept, literalizing what was originally a profound philosophical and cosmic principle. Regarding the fate of the soul, Blavatsky delves into the soul's journey, transmigration, and nirvana. She clarifies the concept of metempsychosis, often misunderstood as literal reincarnation into animals, a gross distortion of the original teaching, as the cyclical purification and progression of the soul through various states and spheres of existence. This journey, driven by karmic law, the law of cause and effect, is a process of learning, growth, and purification, leading ultimately to reunion with the divine spirit, a state of liberation and blissful absorption into the universal consciousness known as nirvana or moksha. This is not the annihilation of individuality, but its expansion and absorption into the boundless all, a state far beyond the simplistic heaven or hell dichotomy of exoteric Christianity. She emphasizes that the soul's journey is one of continuous evolution, driven by the experiences gained in each incarnation. She further elaborates on the dual nature of man, presenting humanity not as a simple body and soul entity, but as a complex septenary or trinity of principles mirroring the cosmic constitution. While her full septenary division is complex, she often simplifies it for clarity into a trinity: the physical body, the temporary vehicle, the astral soul, the vehicle of desires, emotions, and lower mind, which persists for a time after death, and the divine spirit, the immortal spark of the universal soul, the true ego. True immortality, she asserts, is not guaranteed, but must be achieved through conscious spiritual development, through the purification of the lower nature and the awakening of the higher self. Miracles, magic, and the devil, natural laws misunderstood. The miracles, recounted in religious texts, both ancient and modern, are stripped of their supernatural mystique by Blavatsky. She argues for natural law, not supernatural intervention. All phenomena, whether seemingly miraculous or mundane, operate according to immutable natural laws. What appears as a miracle is simply the manifestation of occult natural laws, understood and wielded by adepts who have mastered the hidden forces of nature, not a suspension of divine order or an arbitrary act of a personal god. The ancient magician, she contends, was not a charlatan but a profound natural philosopher, one who understood the deeper workings of the cosmos and could consciously manipulate its subtle energies. She provides numerous historical examples of miracles performed by ancient priests, prophets, and philosophers, demonstrating their consistency with the operation of the astral light and the power of trained will. The concept of the devil as a misconception is a significant point of contention with Orthodox theology. Blavatsky contends that the idea of a personal, anthropomorphic devil, a fallen angel actively warring against God, is a theological invention, largely derived from ancient pagan deities of darkness or chaos that were demonized by the emerging Christian church. These pagan deities, often representing the necessary polarity of nature, light and shadow, creation and destruction, were perverted into a singular entity of absolute evil. The true devil, she suggests, is often a personification of elemental forces, or, more profoundly, the lower, animalistic, and ego-driven aspects of human nature itself. The Kamarupa, the principle of desire, which, when unchecked, leads to suffering and moral degradation. Evil, in the esoteric view, is not an external entity but the result of ignorance and the misuse of free will. Her analysis of exorcism and sorcery further illuminates the practical application of occult laws. Exorcism, often seen as a divine intervention to cast out literal demons, is presented as a form of practical magic employed by the clergy, whether consciously or unconsciously. It involves the manipulation of astral forces and the expulsion of undesirable elemental or elementary entities that have attached themselves to an individual. She draws a crucial distinction between beneficent, white, and maleficent, black, magic, emphasizing that the ethical intent and spiritual purity of the practitioner are the sole determinants of whether the magical act leads to good or evil. True magic, she asserts, is simply the science of applying the trained will to the subtle forces of nature for constructive, altruistic purposes, while sorcery is the sane power applied for selfish or destructive ends. The power itself is neutral. Its moral quality is determined by its use. The primacy of subjective reality and inner truth, the world within. A profound undercurrent throughout Isis Unveiled is the radical notion that the only world of reality is the subjective. This statement, found in the concluding remarks of the book, encapsulates a fundamental esoteric principle, that external phenomena are but reflections or manifestations of inner, subjective states and universal consciousness. Blavatsky argues that the modern world's obsession with objective, material reality has led it astray, causing it to mistake the shadow for the substance. True perception, she contends, arises not from the external senses, but from the awakening of inner faculties that can apprehend the noumenal world, the world of causes, archetypes, and spiritual essences. This emphasis on the subjective is intimately linked to the journey from exoteric ritual to internal realization. For the ancients, external rites and ceremonies were merely symbolic representations designed to awaken inner truths and facilitate a personal, experiential connection with the divine. They were aids to contemplation, not ends in themselves. However, as religions became institutionalized, the outer form superseded the inner meaning, leading to a sterile, dogmatic adherence to ritual without genuine spiritual understanding. Blavatsky calls for a return to the direct experience of truth, where the individual becomes their own temple, and the divine is sought within, not in external shrines or through intermediaries. This leads directly to the concept of the God within. The ultimate reality, the supreme principle, is not an external, anthropomorphic deity to be worshipped from afar, but an immanent spark within every human being, the divine spirit, the true ego. The worship of the Vedic Pitris, as mentioned in the text, transitioning to the worship of the spiritual portion of mankind, signifies this shift from external ancestral veneration to the recognition and cultivation of the divine potential within each individual. The path to wisdom and liberation is therefore an inward journey, a process of self-discovery and the realization of one's inherent divinity. This inner awakening, rather than blind faith or adherence to dogma, is the true key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe. The esoteric cosmology and anthropology, the grand design of being. Beyond the general concepts of cycles and the astral light, Blavatsky delves into a more specific esoteric cosmology and anthropology, outlining the intricate structure of the universe and man. She presents a universe that is not merely physical but multidimensional, composed of various planes of existence, each with its own laws and inhabitants. This cosmology is rooted in ancient traditions, particularly the Kabbalah and Hindu philosophy. Central to this understanding is the septenary constitution of man and cosmos. Just as the universe is composed of 7 principles or planes, e.g., arupa or formless, rupa or form, and various subplanes of matter and spirit, so too is man, a miniature reflection, a microcosm of this macrocosm. While the precise terminology can vary, the core idea is that man is composed of 7 principles, ranging from the densest physical body to the highest immortal spirit. These principles are rupa, physical body, the densest mortal vehicle; prana, life principle, the vital force animating the body; linga sharira, astral body, the ethereal double, the blueprint of the physical, which can separate during sleep or trance; kama rupa, desire body, the seat of passions, desires, and animal instincts. This principle, when uncontrolled, binds man to the material plane; manas, mind, the thinking principle, which can be dual lower manas, concrete, personal mind, and higher manas, abstract, impersonal mind, connected to the spiritual ego; buddhi, spiritual soul, the vehicle of pure spirit, intuition, and discernment, often seen as the spiritual consciousness; atma, spirit, the highest, universal, impersonal self, a ray of the absolute, immortal, and divine. The interplay and evolution of these principles are crucial to understanding human destiny. The lower principles are mortal and dissipate after death, while the higher principles, especially Atma, Buddhi, Manas, constitute the immortal ego that reincarnates. Blavatsky also introduces other subtle forces beyond the astral light, such as Fohat and Prana. Fohat is the dynamic, active principle of cosmic electricity, the bridge between spirit and matter, the intelligent force that guides the formation of worlds and the manifestation of phenomena. It is the divine energy that creates and sustains the universe. Prana is the universal life force, the breath of life that animates all living things, flowing through the various principles of man and permeating the cosmos. These forces are not mere physical energies, but intelligent, conscious expressions of the divine will. The philosophy of magic and theurgy, the adept as master of nature. Isis Unveiled is fundamentally a treatise on the science of magic, not as superstition or trickery, but as the practical application of universal laws by those who understand them. Blavatsky meticulously distinguishes between white and black magic, emphasizing intent. True magic, or theurgy, is the beneficent use of occult powers for spiritual purposes, for healing, for enlightenment, and for the good of humanity. It is performed by adepts who have purified their lower nature and are motivated by selfless compassion. Black magic, or sorcery, conversely, is the misuse of these same powers for selfish gain, for control over others, or for malevolent purposes. The power itself is neutral. Its moral quality is determined solely by the intent and purity of the practitioner. The role of will, imagination, and faith in producing phenomena is paramount. Blavatsky argues that these are not merely psychological states, but active, creative forces. A trained and focused will, combined with a vivid and pure imagination, can impress images and intentions upon the astral light, leading to their manifestation in the physical world. Faith, when understood as an unwavering conviction based on knowledge, amplifies this power. The miracles of ancient prophets and the genuine phenomena of mediums are thus explained as the result of these inherent human faculties, consciously or unconsciously exercised rather than divine intervention or supernatural suspension of natural law. The adept as a master of natural law is a central figure in Blavatsky's exposition. Unlike the passive medium who is controlled by external forces, the adept is a conscious, self-mastered individual who understands the hidden laws of nature and can consciously wield them. They have undergone rigorous training, purified their moral character, and awakened their inner spiritual faculties. They are not performing supernatural acts, but demonstrating a deeper understanding of the natural order, a science that modern intellect has yet to fully grasp. The adept embodies the synthesis of science, religion, and philosophy, living proof of the potential inherent in every human being. Conclusion: the dawn of a new cycle. Isis Unveiled culminates not in despair over humanity's past errors, but with a profound sense of hope and a prophetic vision for the future. Blavatsky foresees a grand convergence of ancient wisdom and future science. She posits that modern science, having exhaustively explored the material realm and reached the limits of its reductionist paradigm, will inevitably be forced to turn its gaze inward and upward. It will, she predicts, rediscover the spiritual dimensions of existence, recognizing the intelligent forces and subtle energies that the ancients understood so intimately. The chasm between science and religion, artificially created by materialism and dogmatism, will finally be bridged as both disciplines converge upon the eternal truths of the perennial philosophy. The once ridiculed concepts of ancient mysticism, such as the ether, universal magnetism, the power of thought, and the reality of unseen intelligences, will find their validation in the discoveries of a more enlightened science, moving beyond mere physical causality to embrace intelligent design and spiritual purpose. This synthesis will mark a new era of understanding, where the spiritual and the material are seen as two inseparable facets of a single, unified reality. This convergence will herald the true unveiling of Isis. As humanity sheds the layers of ignorance, prejudice, and sectarian division that have long obscured its vision, the veil that conceals the true nature of reality will begin to lift. The unity of religion, science, and philosophy will be recognized, not as a utopian dream, but as an inherent truth of the cosmos, a return to the pristine wisdom of the earliest ages. The night made day, as she so poetically puts it, will allow humanity to look with undazzled gaze upon the unveiled truth. This unveiling is not merely an intellectual exercise or the acquisition of new facts. It is a profound spiritual awakening, a recognition of the divine essence within all things and, most importantly, within ourselves. It signifies a shift from external authority to internal realization, from blind faith to enlightened understanding. Ultimately, Blavatsky's monumental work is a fervent call to individual enlightenment. While she exposes the flaws and corruptions of institutions, both scientific and religious, her ultimate message is one of personal responsibility and the imperative of self-knowledge. The path to liberation, both individual and collective, lies not in adherence to external creeds or reliance on technological marvels alone, but in the earnest pursuit of truth, the purification of the lower nature, and the conscious unfolding of the higher spiritual faculties that lie dormant within every human being. It is a call to become an initiate in the grand mystery of life, to lift one's own veil through diligent study, ethical living, and spiritual discipline, and to behold the radiant, unified truth that lies at the heart of the cosmos. In Isis Unveiled, H.P. Blavatsky has not merely written a book, she has bequeathed to humanity a master key, inviting all who dare to seek to unlock the profound mysteries of existence and to participate in the grand unveiling of the divine. It stands as a timeless testament to the enduring power of truth and the eternal quest for wisdom. Thank you for delving into Isis Unveiled with Occult Mysticism. Share your thoughts below and connect with our community. Like, subscribe, and tap the bell for more mystical revelations. Until next time, keep exploring the mysteries.